The attack came without warning. At 0347 Galactic Standard Time, hegemony forces struck 12 Confederation worlds simultaneously. Their timing was perfect. Their coordination was flawless. Within minutes, 800 warships had appeared. Across the Confederation's most vital systems, Ambassador Zethkai was awakened by emergency alarms at Central Station. The command center was chaos. Communication screens showed desperate messages from colonies under attack. The hegemony had not just struck at military targets. They were systematically destroying civilian infrastructure. Status report, Zethkai demanded. Admiral Rethkon looked older than his years. 12 systems under attack. Colony ships destroyed. Mining stations eliminated. Communication relays targeted. They are not trying to conquer our worlds. They are trying to destroy our civilization. The tactical display showed the full scope of the disaster. Red indicators marked hegemony forces throughout Confederation space. Blue markers showed Confederation defenders, hopelessly outnumbered at every location. What about our response fleets? Zethkai asked. Moving to intercept, but they will not. Arrive for hours, by then the damage will be complete. Commander Velthara studied the attack patterns. This is not a military campaign. This is systematic extermination. They are destroying everything that makes our worlds habitable. Through the chaos, a calm voice cut across the command center communications. Central Station, this is Captain Chen. We are aware of the situation. Human Defense Command is implementing emergency protocols. Zethkai grabbed the communication microphone. Captain Chun, the situation is desperate. Can you provide assistance? Assistance is already en route. Ambassador, please stand by. On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing near the attack systems. At first, Zethkai thought they were more hegemony ships. Then he saw the identification codes. Human vessels were materializing throughout Confederation space. Admiral, called the sensor officer, I am detecting massive fleet movements. Human ships are appearing in every system under attack. The numbers were impossible. Hundreds of human ships appeared near each battle zone. But these were not the patrol vessels that had participated in the training exercise. These were warships larger than anything in the Confederation Navy. Captain Chun, Admiral Rethkon said, how many ships are you deploying? Current response force consists of 43,000 combat vessels. Additional units are moving into position from regional commands. 43,000 ships? The number was so large that the display systems could not properly show all the contacts. Human forces outnumbered the attacking hegemony fleet by more than 50 to 1, but the scale of the response was not the most shocking part. What stunned everyone in the command center was the speed. The first human ships had arrived less than 5 minutes after the attacks began. Captain Chun, Zethkai asked, how did you respond so quickly? Your nearest bases are weeks away from our systems. We were not responding from our bases, Ambassador. These ships were already in position throughout your territory. The implications hit Zethkai like a physical blow. Human ships had been secretly positioned throughout Confederation space. They had been watching, waiting, ready to respond to exactly this type of attack. Dr. Kethmer monitored the human communication traffic. Ambassador, they are not just coordinating ships near our worlds. I am detecting command signals from across the galaxy. This response is being managed from hundreds of different locations simultaneously. On the tactical displays, the battles were brief and decisive. Hegemony ships found themselves surrounded by human forces that appeared from nowhere. The attackers had expected to face desperate Confederation defenders. Instead, they met coordinated resistance that made their own coordination look primitive. Hegemony fleet in the Altair system is requesting terms, reported the communication officer. Kepler system secured. Hegemony survivors in retreat came. Another report, system after system, the pattern repeated. Human forces appeared in overwhelming numbers. Hegemony ships surrendered or fled. In less than 2 hours, the attack that was supposed to destroy Confederation civilization had been completely defeated. Captain Chun's image appeared on the main display. Behind her, the bridge of the Determination buzzed with activity. But she looked calm, as if coordinating a galaxy-wide military operation was routine. Ambassador Zethkai, the immediate threat has been neutralized. However, our analysis indicates this attack was only the beginning of a larger hegemony campaign. What do you mean? Admiral Rethkon asked. Intelligence gathered from captured hegemony vessels indicates they have additional fleets preparing to attack other civilizations throughout this region of the galaxy. The assault on Confederation worlds was meant to be the first of many coordinated strikes. The sensor officer looked up from his station. Admiral, I am detecting new contacts throughout the local stellar region, massive fleet movements. The display expanded to show a three-dimensional map covering hundreds of star systems. Human ships were moving throughout the region, not just near Confederation worlds, but near the territories of dozens of other species. Captain Chun, Zethkai said slowly, are you deploying forces to protect other civilizations as well? Yes, Ambassador. The Human Defense Council has determined that the hegemony threat requires a comprehensive response. We are currently positioning forces near all potential targets. Commander Velthara studied the fleet movements. Captain Chun, the scale of your deployment covers the entire local region of the galaxy. How many ships are you moving? Captain Chun consulted her displays. Current deployment consists of approximately 800,000 vessels across 1,500 star systems. This represents about 30% of our available forces in this galactic region, 800,000 ships. 30% of available forces. The numbers were beyond comprehension. The humans had not just responded to an attack on their diplomatic partners. They had deployed an army that could protect every civilization in the local galaxy. Captain Chun, Admiral Rethkon asked quietly, how long have you been monitoring our region of space? Human intelligence services have been observing galactic political developments for several decades. We identified the hegemony as a destabilizing force approximately 15 years ago. And you have been preparing for this conflict for 15 years? Preparing is not the correct term, Admiral. We have been positioning resources and developing response capabilities. When the hegemony threat became critical, we were ready to act. Dr. Kethmer had been analyzing the communication patterns between human fleets. Captain Chun, the coordination you are displaying involves ships separated by thousands of light years. The computational requirements alone should be beyond any civilization's capabilities. Captain Chun smiled. Dr. Kethmer, you are thinking about this problem incorrectly. You assume that coordination requires centralized command and control. Human military doctrine is based on distributed intelligence. Every ship, every commander, every crew member has access to the same information network. But someone must be in overall command, Commander Velthara protested. Command emerges from the network itself. When a threat is identified, all human forces with the capability to respond do so automatically. Individual commanders make tactical decisions based on complete battlefield information. The result appears to be centralized coordination, but it is actually the product of millions of independent decisions made with perfect information. The concept was revolutionary. Human forces did not operate under traditional command structures. They functioned as a single organism with distributed intelligence. Every part could act independently while contributing to the overall response. Over the following days, the true scope of human capabilities became clear. The hegemony had planned additional attacks on 17 different civilizations. Every single assault was intercepted by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Species that had never heard of humanity suddenly found human warships protecting their worlds. Ancient civilizations that had existed for millions of years discovered that a young species from the galaxy's edge had been quietly watching over them. The final shock came when Captain Chun revealed the source of human intelligence about the hegemony plans. Captain Chun, Zethkai asked, how did you know about all the planned attacks? Ambassador, we have monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The hegemony began planning this campaign 18 months ago. We have been tracking their preparations since the beginning. Monitoring stations throughout the galaxy? Yes, human civilization extends far beyond our official colonial territory. We establish observation posts, research stations, and communication relays wherever we find interesting phenomena or potential threats. The revelation was staggering. While other species knew only their immediate neighbors, the humans had quietly spread throughout the galaxy. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for threats that other civilizations did not even know existed. Ambassador Zethkai stood at the viewing port of Central Station, watching human ships patrol nearby space. The vessels moved with the confidence of a species that had already mapped every star and cataloged every threat in the galaxy. Captain Chun, he said into his communication device, may I ask you a direct question? The crystal towers of Zephyria reached high into the purple sky. Inside the tallest tower, the Galactic Council was meeting. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in a great circle. Their voices echoed off the smooth walls as they talked. About important matters, Commander Vexthal stood at the center of the circle. His blue skin shone under the bright lights. His forearms moved as he spoke to the council members. He was excited about something big. My fellow council members, Vexthal said in a loud voice, today I bring you great news. Our scouts have found a new world. A world full of resources. A world full of weak beings who know nothing about the galaxy. The council members made happy sounds. Some clapped their hands. Others made clicking noises with their mouths. They all loved hearing about new worlds to control. Vexthal touched a small device on his belt. A picture appeared in the air above him. It showed a blue and green planet with white clouds. The planet looked beautiful and peaceful. This is Earth, Vexthal said. The beings who live there call themselves humans. They are very simple creatures. They fight each other over small things like land and water. They have only been in space for a few hundred cycles. Their weapons are weak. Their ships are slow. More happy sounds came from the council. Some members stood up and cheered. They could already imagine the riches they would take from this new world. But in the back of the great room, one old being did not cheer. Elder Kefter sat very still in his chair. His ancient eyes stared at the picture of Earth. His old hands shook as he gripped the arms of his chair. Kefter was very old. He had lived for over 800 cycles. His skin was gray and wrinkled. His body was bent with age. Most council members thought he was too old to be useful. They often ignored what he said. Vexthal continued talking. The humans have some interesting things. They have many different types of food. They make art and music. But most important, their world has metals we need. Rare metals that are hard to find in other places. What do you suggest we do? Asked Council Leader Morduk. She was a tall being with 6 eyes and green skin. She always wanted to hear all the facts before making decisions. We should make contact with them, Vexthal said with a big smile. We tell them we come in peace. We offer to share knowledge. Then, when they trust us, we take what we want. It will be easy. They are too weak to fight back. Most of the council members liked this plan. They talked excitedly to each other. They could see themselves getting rich from this new world, but Elder Kefter slowly stood up. His old bones creaked as he rose from his chair. The room became quiet. Everyone looked at him. No, Kefter said in a voice that shook with age. We must not do this thing. Some council members laughed. Others rolled their eyes. They had heard the old elder say no to many things before. Elder Kefter, Vexthal said with a fake smile, we respect your wisdom. But surely you can see this is a good chance for us. These humans are nothing to fear. Kefter walked slowly to the center of the room. Each step was hard for him. But his old eyes burned with something that made some council members feel uncomfortable. You are all too young to remember, Kefter said. Too young to know the old stories. Too young to understand the warnings. What warnings? Asked Council Leader Mordek. She tried to sound patient, but she was getting annoyed with the old being. Kefter looked around the room. He saw young faces full of greed and excitement. He saw beings who thought they knew everything about the galaxy. Long ago, Kefter began, there was another great civilization. They called themselves the Vorthek Empire. They ruled many worlds. They had ships that could destroy planets. They had weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Some council members yawned. They had heard many old stories from Kefter before. The Vorthek found a small blue world, Kefter continued. A world with weak beings who fought each other. The Vorthek thought these beings would be easy to control. They thought wrong. Elder, Vexthel said, these are just old stories. Myths and legends. They have nothing to do with our situation now, but Kefter did not stop talking. The beings on that blue world looked weak. They looked simple. But when the Vorthak tried to take their world, something terrible happened. The weak beings became something else. Something dangerous. Kefter's voice grew stronger as he spoke. They did not fight like other beings in the galaxy. They did not follow the rules of war. They used tricks and lies. They turned the Vorthak's own weapons against them. They never gave up, even when they should have died. What happened to the Vorthek? Asked a young council member. Despite trying not to care, she found herself interested in the story. They are gone, Kefter said simply, all of them. Their great empire turned to dust. Their mighty ships became floating graveyards, and the beings from the blue world, they survived. They always survive. The room was very quiet now. Even the young council members who usually ignored Kefter were listening. The old records are clear, Kefter said. Never engage with the beings from the blue world. Never try to control them. Never make them angry. This is the most important rule in all the galaxy. Vexthel laughed, but it did not sound happy. Elder, you are talking about myths. Old stories meant to scare children. Look at the facts. He pointed at the picture of Earth. These humans have weak ships. They have simple weapons. They cannot even travel to other stars yet. That is what the Vorthek thought too, Kefter said quietly. Council leader Mordek stood up. She had heard enough. Elder Kefter, we thank you for sharing the old stories. But we must deal with the world as it is now, not as it was in ancient Tales. These are not Tales, Kefter said, his voice cracking with emotion. My own grandfather told me these stories. His grandfather told him. We are the descendants of the few Vorthek who escaped. We carry their warnings in our blood. But the council members were no longer listening. They were talking excitedly about the riches they would gain from Earth. They made plans for ships and soldiers. They talked about which resources they wanted. Most Kefter looked around the room one more time. He saw the same greed that had destroyed the Vorthek. He saw the same foolish confidence. He saw beings who thought they were smarter than their ancestors. You will not listen, Kefter said sadly. Just as the Vorthek would not listen to their elders. Just as every civilization refuses to listen when they think they have found easy prey. He walked slowly back to his chair. His old body felt heavier than before. He had tried to warn them. He had shared the most important knowledge he possessed. But they would not hear him, the council voted. Almost everyone said yes to contacting the humans. Only Elder Kefter voted no. As the meeting ended and the council members left to celebrate their decision, Kefter sat alone in the great room. He stared at the picture of Earth that still floated in the air. The rage that burns in their blood, he whispered to himself, remembering his grandfather's words. The madness that drives them beyond reason. The species that turns weakness into strength and defeat into victory. He closed his ancient eyes and felt very tired. Soon, the Zephyrian civilization would learn the same lesson that the Vorthek had learned. Soon, they would understand why the elders always warned against engaging with humans. But by then, it would be too late. 18 months had passed since the Zephyrians first arrived at Earth. Ambassador Quilinara felt very pleased with herself. Everything was going perfectly. The humans were now completely dependent on Zephyrian technology for their power plants, their communications, and even their defense systems. Today was the day she would reveal the truth to them. Commander Vexthel's main fleet had arrived at the edge of the solar system during the night. 50 warships waited in the darkness, ready to take control of Earth if the humans tried to resist. Quilinara put on her formal uniform and walked to the communication room on the Starweaver. She practiced her speech one more time. She wanted to sound strong but not cruel. She would give the humans a chance to surrender peacefully. The human leaders appeared on the screen as usual. President Morrison looked tired. His hair had become whiter over the past months. The other humans also looked worried about something. "Good morning, Ambassador," President Morrison said. "We need to talk to you about something important," Quilinara smiled. They probably wanted to ask for more technology. Humans always wanted more things. "Of course, President. But first, I have something important to tell you." She stood up straight and used her most official voice. "My dear human friends, the time has come for honesty between our peoples. The Zephyrian Galactic Council has decided that Earth must become part of our empire. You will give us control of your governments, your armies, and your resources. In return, we will protect you and guide you as our junior partners." She expected the humans to look shocked and afraid. She expected them to beg and plead. Instead, President Morrison just nodded slowly. "I see," he said calmly. "And if we refuse? Then our fleet will take what we need by force," Quilinara replied. "But I hope that will not be necessary. You are good people. We do not want to hurt you." President Morrison looked at the other humans around the table. Some of them were whispering to each other. Then he looked back at Quilinara. "Ambassador, I have a question for you," he said. "Do you know what humans do when someone tries to take their home?" Quilinara felt confused. This was not how she expected the conversation to go. What do you mean?" "We fight," President Morrison said simply. "We fight with everything we have. We fight until we win or until we die. We never surrender, we never give up. And we are very, very good at fighting." Suddenly alarms began, ringing on the Starweaver. Captain Zarthik ran into the communication room. His face was full of panic. "Ambassador!" he shouted. "We are surrounded. Human ships are everywhere." "That is impossible," Quilinara said. "Humans do not have ships. That can—" Her words stopped as she looked at the displays around the room. The screens showed dozens of human ships appearing from behind asteroids, gas clouds, and even from inside the atmosphere of Jupiter. The ships looked nothing like the simple vessels the humans had shown them before. These ships were sleek and fast, with weapons that glowed with dangerous energy. "Surprised?" asked President Morrison from the communication screen. "We have been busy while you were teaching us about your technology." Quilinara's mind raced. But your ships were primitive. Your weapons were weak. We saw them ourselves." "You saw what we wanted you to see," said a new voice. General Chun appeared on the screen next to President Morrison. "Those were fake ships, mock-ups. We built them to make you feel safe while we built our real fleet." "This is impossible," Quilinara whispered. "You could not have learned our technology so quickly." "You are right," General Chun said with a cold smile. "We could not have learned your technology. But we could improve it. Human engineers are very good at taking things apart and making them better." On the main display, Quilinara watched as human ships moved into attack positions around the Starweaver. The ships moved with precision and coordination that made her stomach feel sick. These were not the actions of simple, primitive beings. Captain Zarthik was speaking frantically into his communication device. "Fleet Command, this is Starweaver. We need immediate assistance. The humans have ships we did not know about." Commander Vextel's voice came through the speakers, full of anger and disbelief. "What do you mean they have ships?" "Our scouts reported no significant military presence." "The scouts saw what we wanted them to see," General Chun said. Her voice was now being broadcast to the entire Zephyrian fleet. "Just like you saw what we wanted you to see. Did you really think we would show you our real defenses?" Quilinara felt cold fear creeping up her spine. But we monitored your communications. We heard your leaders talking. We knew your military capabilities." President Morrison actually laughed. "You heard actors reading scripts. You monitored fake communication networks. Every conversation you listened to was planned and rehearsed." While You were listening to our fake communications? General Chun added. We were listening to your real ones. We know where every one of your ships is. We know their weapons, their shields, their weaknesses. We have been preparing for this moment for 18 months. The truth hit Quilinara like a physical blow. The humans had been lying from the very beginning. Everything they had shown, everything they had said, everything they had shared, was all part of an elaborate trap. You. You deceived us, she said weakly. Yes, President Morrison said without shame. We did, just like you tried to deceive us. The difference is, we were better at it. Commander Vexel's main fleet was. Now visible on the long-range sensors. 50 powerful warships moved toward Earth, their weapons charging for battle. But as they approached, more human ships appeared to meet them. Ships that came from hiding places throughout the solar system. Where did all these ships come from? Captain Zarthik asked in a voice full of fear. We built them, General Chun replied. While you were congratulating yourselves on how clever you were, we were working day and night. Every piece of technology you gave us, we studied and improved. Every weakness in your designs we found and exploited. The first battle began near Mars. Zephyrian ships opened fire with their energy weapons, expecting to destroy the human vessels easily. Instead, the human ships scattered like a swarm of insects, moving too fast and unpredictably for the Zephyrian. Targeting systems to track. Then the human ships began to fire back. Their weapons were strange things that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Instead of energy beams, they fired physical projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. The projectiles tore through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Their weapons, Captain Zarthik said in amazement. They are not using our technology at all? They built completely new weapons. We learned from your technology, General Chun explained as she watched the battle on her screens. But we did not copy it, we improved it. Human weapons work differently than yours. We think differently than you do. Within an hour, 12 Zephyrian warships had been destroyed or disabled. The humans had lost only 3 ships. Commander Vexthal could not believe what he was seeing. This is impossible, he transmitted to all his ships. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be primitive. They were never weak, said a new voice on the communication channel. Elder Kefter had somehow accessed the fleet's communication system. I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you what happened to the Vorthek Empire, but you would not listen. Elder, Commander Vexthal said, these cannot be the same beings from your old stories. Look at them fight, Kefter replied sadly. Look at how they move and think and adapt. Look at how they turn their enemy's strength against them. This is exactly what the old records described. On Earth, President Morrison was speaking to his people through every communication network on the planet. Citizens of Earth, he said, today we face our greatest test. An alien empire has tried to enslave us. They thought we were weak and stupid. They were wrong. All around the world, humans were preparing for war. Not just soldiers, but ordinary people, farmers and teachers and doctors and children. They had all known this day would come. They had all been preparing in their own ways. The Zephyrians made one mistake, President Morrison continued. They assumed we were like other species. They had conquered. They assumed we would give up when faced with superior numbers. They do not understand what it means to be human. In space, the battle was spreading throughout the solar system. Human ships appeared from everywhere, hidden bases on asteroids, camouflage stations in asteroid fields, mobile platforms that had been disguised as space debris. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Ambassador Quilinara watched the destruction of her people's fleet and felt something break inside her mind. Everything she had believed about humans was wrong. Everything, Commander? Vexthal had told her was wrong. The only one who had spoken the truth was the old elder they had all ignored. Why? She asked President Morrison. Why did you let us think you were weak? Why did you not just tell us to leave from the beginning? President Morrison's expression became very serious. Because we needed to learn about you first. We needed to understand your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We needed to know how many ships you had and where they came from. You taught us everything we needed to know to defeat you. 3 months after the battle at Earth, the Zephyrian Galactic Council met in emergency session. The great crystal hall that had once been filled with confident voices was now quiet and fearful. Half of the council members were missing. Their worlds had gone silent. Council leader Morduk stood at the center of the circle, but she looked much older than before. Her green skin had turned pale, and her 6 eyes were filled with worry. "Report," she said to Commander Vexthal. Vexthal limped forward. His left arm was gone, lost in the battle at Earth. His once bright blue skin was now scarred and gray. "The situation is very bad," he said quietly. "How bad?" asked another council member. "The humans are not defending anymore," Vexthal replied. "They are attacking. They have appeared in 17 different star systems. They strike without warning and disappear before we can respond." Elder Kefter sat in his usual place at the back of the room, but now everyone was looking at him. The old being who had been ignored for so long was suddenly the most important person in the galaxy. "Tell us about the old records," Morduk said to Kefter. "Tell us everything you know about what happened to the Vorthak." Kefter stood slowly. His ancient body seemed even more fragile than before, but his voice was strong. "The pattern is always the same," he said. "First, the humans seem weak and stupid. Then, when attacked, they reveal their true nature. Finally, they do not stop until their enemies are completely destroyed." "But surely they will stop once they have pushed us back," said a young council member. "Surely they will be satisfied with victory." Kefter shook his head sadly. "You do not understand humans? They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight because someone tried to take their freedom. They fight because someone threatened their families. And when humans fight for these reasons, they never stop." As if to prove his point, alarms began ringing throughout the building. A communications officer ran into the hall. "Council leader," the officer shouted. "Human ships have been detected in the Zephyr Prime system." Everyone in the hall gasped. Zephyr Prime was their capital world, the heart of their empire. It was protected by massive defense stations and hundreds of warships. The humans could not possibly have reached it, but they had, on the main display screen, everyone could see human ships moving through space near their homeworld. The ships looked different than the ones that had fought at Earth. These were larger and more heavily armed. They moved with the same deadly precision, but now they carried weapons that could destroy entire cities. "How many ships?" Morduk asked. 30 that we can see," the officer replied. "But based on what happened at other worlds, there are probably more hiding somewhere." "What are our defenses doing?" demanded Vex. Single quotes. The answer came from the display screen itself. Defense Station Alpha, the most powerful fortress in the Zephyrian Empire, exploded in a ball of fire. Then Defense Station Beta, then Gamma. One by one, the mighty fortresses that had protected Zephyr Prime for centuries were destroyed. "This is impossible," whispered a council member. "Those stations were designed to stop entire fleets." "The humans are not fighting like a normal fleet," Kefter explained. "They do not come at their enemies head-on. They find weaknesses and exploit them. They turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses." On the screen, they could see how the humans were doing it. Instead of attacking the defense stations directly, they were using the station's own weapons against them. Somehow, the humans had found a way to hack into Zephyrian computer systems and turn their automated defenses around. "They are using our own technology to destroy us," Morduk said in amazement. "No," Kefter corrected. "They are using our own minds to destroy us. They understand how we think. They predict what we will do before we do it. This is what makes them so dangerous." The human fleet began moving toward the planet itself. But instead of attacking the cities, they began broadcasting a message. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and clear. "People of Zephyr Prime," the voice said. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Fleet. We are not here to hurt civilians. We are here to end your government's war against Earth. Admiral Chun appeared on the screen. She was the same small woman with gray hair who had planned Earth's defense. But now she wore the uniform of a space fleet commander, and her eyes held the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Your leaders tried to enslave my people," Chun continued. "They thought we were weak and stupid. They were wrong. Now they will face the consequences of their actions." Council Leader Mordak activated the communication system. "Admiral Chun," she said, "I am Council Leader Mordak. We are willing to discuss terms for peace." Chun's expression did not change. "There will be no peace," she said simply. "There will only be surrender. Your empire tried to destroy human freedom. Now the human species will make sure your empire never threatens anyone again." "But we can negotiate," Mordak said desperately. "We can find a solution that works for everyone." The time for negotiation was before you attacked Earth," Chun replied. "Now it is too late." Elder Kefter stood up and walked to the communication console. "Admiral Chun," he said, "I am Elder Kefter. I tried to warn my people not to engage with humans. I told them the old stories, but they would not listen." Chun looked at the old being with interest. "You knew this would happen?" "My ancestors survived the last time someone tried to conquer humans," Kefter replied. "They passed down warnings through the generations. I tried to share those warnings, but I was ignored." "Then you understand why we cannot stop," Chun said. "This has happened before. It will happen again unless we make sure everyone in the galaxy knows what happens when someone threatens humanity." The human ships began moving toward the government buildings, but they did not fire their weapons. Instead, they began landing. Troops, human soldiers in advanced armor, spread out through the capital city. "They are not destroying everything," observed a council member. "They are taking control." "They want our government intact," Kefter realized. "They want to use our own systems to send a message to the rest of the galaxy." He was right. Within hours, human soldiers had taken control of the planetary government. They did not hurt civilians, but they arrested every government official and military officer they could find. Admiral Chun appeared on every communication network in the Zephyrian Empire. "Citizens of the Zephyrian worlds," she announced, "your government has fallen. Your military has been defeated. Your empire is ended. This is what happens when you threaten humans," she continued. "We do not start wars, but we finish them. We do not attack innocent people, but we destroy those who would attack us." All across the galaxy, Zephyrian colonies and outposts received the same message. Most of them surrendered immediately. A few tried to fight, but they were quickly overwhelmed by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. In the council hall, the remaining members sat in stunned silence. Their mighty empire, built over thousands of years, had been destroyed in less than 6 months. "How did they do it so quickly?" asked one member. "They did not have to build an empire," Kefter explained. "They only had to destroy one. It is much easier to tear something down than to build it up." "What will happen to us now?" asked another member. Before Kefter could answer, Admiral Chun appeared in the hall. She had come in person with only a small group of human soldiers. She walked to the center of the room and looked around at the defeated aliens. "You will be judged," she said simply. "Those who planned the attack on Earth will face human justice. Those who followed orders will be sent home to their families. Your worlds will be free to govern themselves, but they will never again be allowed to threaten other species." "And what about the old records?" Kefter asked. "What about the warnings?" Chun looked at the ancient being with something like respect. "The old records will be preserved," she said, "and new records will be created. Every species in the galaxy will know what happened here. They will know what happens when someone tries to enslave humanity." She turned to address the entire council. "Your empire is finished," she said, "but your species will survive. Learn from this. Teach your children. Make sure this never happens again." As Admiral Chun left the hall, Elder Kefter sat down heavily in his chair. He had lived long enough to see his worst fears come true. But he had also lived long enough to see humanity's true nature revealed. They were not cruel or evil. They did not want to rule the galaxy. They simply wanted to be left alone. But when someone threatened their freedom, they became the most dangerous force in the universe. The storm has passed, Kefter whispered to himself, but the galaxy will never be the same. 1 year after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, Elder Kefter sat alone in his small home on a quiet moon. The great crystal towers were gone now, the mighty fleets were scattered. The proud empire had become just another story in the long history of the galaxy. But Kefter was not alone for long. A young being knocked on his door. She had blue skin like the old Zephyrians, but her eyes were different. They held curiosity instead of arrogance. "Elder Kefter?" she said nervously. "My name is Zarathul. I am a student of galactic history. May I speak with you?" Kefter invited her inside. His home was simple now, with just a few chairs and a table. On the walls were ancient books and scrolls, the old records he had spent his life protecting. "What do you want to know, child?" he asked as they sat down. "I want to understand what really happened," Zarathul said. "The official records say the humans defeated us in a normal war, but I have heard whispers. Old people talk about warnings that were ignored. They say this has happened before." Kefter looked at the young being for a long moment. She reminded him of himself when he was young, hungry for knowledge and truth. "It has happened before," he said finally, "many times. And it will happen." Again, he stood up slowly and walked to one of his bookshelves. He pulled out an ancient scroll, so old that the writing was barely visible. "This is the oldest record I have," he said. "It tells of the first great civilization to encounter humans. They were called the Sectar Dominion. They ruled the galaxy 50,000 years ago." Zarathul's eyes grew wide. 50,000 years? But that would mean... "Yes," Kefter nodded. "Humans have been in the galaxy much longer than anyone realizes. They were here before any of us. They watched civilizations rise and fall. They let us build our empires and fight our wars. They only acted when someone tried to take their freedom." He unrolled the scroll carefully. The writing was in an ancient language that few beings could read anymore. "The Sectar found a small blue world inhabited by primitive beings," Kefter. "Read aloud. The beings seemed weak and divided. The Sectar decided to use them as slaves. Within 2 years, the entire Sectar Dominion was destroyed. The beings from the blue world had somehow learned to use Sectar technology better than the Sectar themselves." Zarathul shivered. "It sounds exactly like what happened to us." "Because it is exactly what happened to us," Kefter replied. "And to the Vorthek Empire before us. And to a dozen other civilizations whose names are forgotten now." He walked to another shelf and pulled out more records. Some were carved in stone. Others were written on metal plates. A few were stored in crystal. Data cores. Every 5 to 10,000 years, a new civilization becomes powerful enough to threaten humans, he explained. Every time that civilization thinks humans are weak and primitive, every time they learn the truth too late. "But why?" Zarathul asked. "Why do humans let civilizations grow powerful if they could stop them earlier?" Kefter smiled sadly. "Because humans are not conquerors, child. They do not want to rule the galaxy. They want to explore and learn and create. They only become warriors when someone forces them to fight." He showed her images from the ancient records. Pictures of human ships, human soldiers, human cities. In some images, the humans looked primitive and simple. In others, they appeared as advanced as any galactic civilization. "Humans can be whatever they need to be," Kefter explained. "When they need to seem weak, they appear weak. When they need to fight, they become the greatest warriors in the galaxy. When they need to build, they create wonders that last for millennia." "How is that possible?" Zarathul whispered. "Because humans think differently than we do," Kefter replied. "We see the galaxy as it is. Humans see the galaxy as it could be. We plan for what we know. Humans plan for what they can imagine. That is why they always win." He pulled out one final record, newer than the others. It was a datapad with moving images, recordings from the recent war. "Watch this," he said, showing her footage of human ships in battle. "See how they move? See how they fight?" They do not follow the rules of warfare that every other species uses. They create new rules as they fight. Zarathil watched in fascination as human ships performed impossible maneuvers, using tactics that no military academy taught. They adapt. Faster than we can respond, Kefter continued. They learn from every mistake and never make the same mistake twice. By the time we understand their strategy, they have already changed to a new one. What about now? Zarathil asked. What are humans doing since they defeated us? Kefter activated a communication screen. It showed news from across the galaxy. Human ships were helping rebuild damaged worlds. Human doctors were treating injured. Aliens, human engineers were sharing technology to improve life for everyone. They went back to being explorers and builders, he said. Just like they always do after a war, they do not want to rule us. They want to help us become better. But what if another civilization rises and threatens them again? Then the same thing will happen again, Kefter replied. Humans will seem weak until they are attacked. Then they will become destroyers of empires. It is the cycle that has repeated for 50,000 years. Zarathil was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything she had learned. Elder, she said finally, why are you telling me this? Why share these secrets? Kefter looked at her with his ancient eyes. Because you are young and you will live for many centuries. Because someday another civilization will grow powerful and arrogant. And when that happens, someone needs to remember the warnings. He gave her copies of all his records. Ancient scrolls, stone tablets, crystal data cores, the entire history of humanity's hidden role in galactic civilization. Learn these stories, he told her. Teach them to others. Make sure the warnings are never forgotten again. What if people do not believe me? Zarathil asked. What if they think these are just myths and legends? They will not believe, Kefter said sadly. They never do. Each civilization thinks it is smarter than the ones that came before. Each generation ignores the wisdom of their elders. That is why the cycle continues. As Zarathil prepared to leave, she had one more question. Elder, have you ever met a human? Have you ever talked to one? Kefter smiled. Once, he said. Just after the war ended, Admiral Chung came to see me. She wanted to make sure the old records were preserved. What was she like? Small and quiet, Kefter replied. She looked like a grandmother who might bake cookies for her family, until you looked into her eyes. Then you could see the strength that had destroyed an empire. What did she say to you? Kefter walked to his window and looked out at the stars. She thanked me for trying to warn my people. She said humans prefer peace to war, but they are very good at war when they have no choice. And she asked me to make sure future generations remember what happens when someone threatens human freedom. And will you? I am old, Kefter said. I will not live much longer. But you will carry on the work. You will be the new keeper of warnings. 5 years later, Elder Kefter died peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, representatives from dozens of worlds came to pay their respects. Many of them had never heard of him before the war. Now they knew he had tried to save them all. Zarathil took over his work. She traveled the galaxy, speaking to anyone who would listen. She told the old stories and shared the ancient warnings. She established schools where young beings could learn about the true history of the galaxy. Most people ignored her, just as they had ignored Kefter. But some listened, some remembered. Some understood. 50 years after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, a new civilization called the Kiktar Alliance began to grow powerful. They built mighty fleets and conquered many worlds. Their leaders spoke of expanding across the entire galaxy. Their scouts reported finding a small blue world inhabited by primitive beings who called themselves humans. At the Alliance planning meeting, an old being named Zarathil stood up to speak. Her blue skin was now wrinkled with age, and her voice shook as she spoke. I must warn you, she said. Never engage with humans. They are not what they seem. The elders warned us never to engage with humans, but we ignored the last warning. Learn from our mistake. The young Alliance leaders laughed at her words. They had heard these old stories before. Myths and legends, they called them. Superstitions from a more primitive time. These humans are weak, declared Alliance Commander Corthex. Our scouts have confirmed it. They fight among themselves. Their technology is simple. They will make excellent servants for our empire. Zarathel looked around the room at the confident young faces. She saw the same arrogance that had doomed the Zephyrians, the same pride that had destroyed the Vorthek, the same blindness that had ended a dozen civilizations before them. You will not listen, she said sadly. Just as we did not listen, just as no one ever listens, the cycle continues. As she left the meeting, Zarathil made a final recording. Her voice was tired but determined. To whoever finds this record, she said, know that we tried to warn them. We told them the stories. We shared the ancient wisdom. But they chose to ignore it, just as every civilization ignores the warnings. The humans are still there on their small blue world. They are still watching and waiting. They will seem weak until someone threatens them. Then they will reveal their true nature once again.